Well, good damn evening to you, everybody. How are you? Welcome back. It's good to see you. Look who I found strolling around outside the studio, so I decided to let this guy come in and have a little bit of camera time. Ladies and gentlemen, back once again is my co-host, an all-round swell guy. Love him to pieces. The Wednesday night shows wouldn't be the same without him, and they haven't been the same without him. For those of you who watch me and my way through the last 3 weeks, Kyle Schumacher. Kyle, how the hell are you, my friend?
Good. Yourself?
I'm up and out of bed. You know, every day above dirt's a good one. So anyway, how's everybody this fine, happy Wednesday evening, which I guess is Thursday noonish where you're at, Kyle?
Thursday morning, 9:30 in the morning.
Thursday morning. Okay.
So when I do these streams, I go and I drop the kids off at school, which starts at 9, and then I come back and I set myself up in the garage because I normally have my laptop and gear in the lounge room. So my wife works in our bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
That's her office, and she goes and retreats there, and so I'm in the kitchen lounge area doing the housework or looking after the kids or looking at videos of my distance. For those that don't know and can't figure it out, I'm a trainer, and so I looking at videos of my distance clients and that sort of thing, doing all that kind of jazz in there. But to sit around there for 2 hours doing a live stream would deprive my poor wife of coffee because she wouldn't be able to come into the kitchen and the poor woman needs the coffee to get through office work, which I not even once in my life. Oh no, sorry, I did work experience when I was a kid. It was an engineering firm, and so that was offices. I was doing work experience, so I didn't do anything productive. I talked to the draftsman who'd become an apprentice draftsman at 16 or something, had a work experience himself. And there was also a CAD system, which I thought was pretty amazing. This was like 1985 or something like that. So it was basically like an entire desk, but it was all computing. And, there was a built-in screen. There wasn't a separate monitor or whatever. It was like physically built into the thing. Was a dedicated computer, so the classic traveler computer systems made sense to me. So this is a dedicated CAD thing, and I thought that was pretty amazing, and I got to play with that.
I saw.
I think I did I did a blueprint for a nuclear fallout bunker.
Nice.
That was the sort of thing that was on my mind as a teenager. So that's the only time in my life I've worked in an office. And
I have had such a wide range of office situations. The most satisfying was NASA. For about 6 months in 2002, I worked for NASA out at the Cape, out of my office, and they actually gave me an office. I was a rinky-dink little contractor, and they stuck me in a corner office just because of how chaotic things were out there at that time. And I'll tell you the story briefly here. So from the time that NASA put in at the beginning, and they never dropped this term, they put in what they called office automation, which were dumb terminals that connected to an IBM 3725, connected to an IBM mainframe, all the way up to the PC era. They just called it office automation. But Boeing had that contract always. So we're talking about, I worked with people at that time. They were in their 50s, and good Lord, I guess they'd be in their 70s now. Jesus. Who had installed the office automation system in that building and then gone on to other projects and then come back. But the cabling in the walls at NASA had been laid down by some of the people that I worked with. Coax cable. If you saw like the standard Ethernet that looks like a fat phone jack, it was because there was what was called a media converter attached to a coax cable. It was cheaper just to buy these boxes that a coax cable plugged into and then converted it to RJ45 than to tear out all the cables and do that and rewire everything. So these people who had come out there to work in their early 20s on these new computers for everyone, in 2001, out of nowhere, this company just stepped up and said, hey, we want to bid on the office automation contract. And it was something that Boeing had auto bid and gotten every year. Nobody had ever stepped up and said, we want to bid on this. It was a single. My wife works in government, like defense and aerospace contracts. She would know what this is, but it's basically just a single bidder with no opposition. So this company comes in and the government's like, all right, well, let's see your bid. So all of a sudden, people who had been assured jobs were now kind of starting to sweat a little bit. And Boeing kind of looked at this and said, we got enough iron in the fire. We're going to spin off the office automation people into their own subcontracting company and just focus on aerospace stuff. We're not going to worry about this anymore. So you guys have suddenly gone from you're an appendage of a massive mega corporation to you're not much bigger than the company that's coming in trying to outbid you. So things were in total chaos out there. Because people who'd had jobs for 30 years and wanted to have jobs for 20 more years were suddenly being told that they had to apply for the job that they already held. So they were not having a good time. Me, I was a contractor. I knew I was out there for like at most 120 days, 140 days. And it was, oh my God, it was fantastic. On the flip side of that, a few years later, I worked for a real estate company, and that was the worst job I've ever had. Curiosity got the best of me, and I Googled up the guy who was the sole customer for the alleged IT company that I worked for Remax. And when you Google the guy's name, it's Don Hatchenberger. Literally the first hit I got on Google a couple of years ago was why you should never have your spouse as your business partner. Because a couple of years after I left, he got poking someone, and his wife, who was half of Remax of Central Florida, basically said, I'll take this, and flew the coop on him. So he got his. You know, he made my life miserable for the 2 months that 4 months that I was there. But then, you know, he got his karmic comeuppance later. So I've had it all.
There was a survey done recently and it listed all the different professions that people have and what proportion of the public had a positive view of that profession and trusted them. And the bottom three were used car salesman, a politician, and a real estate guy.
Yes.
Those are the bottom three.
Yes. Glenn Ross is a documentary.
So it kind of makes you wonder why you join that. Why would you join a profession that everyone hates? Like, if you join a profession that everyone hates, but you have power, like, you'll say you're the Spanish Inquisition, Inquisitor. Everyone hates you, but you've got power, so it doesn't matter. But you're a used car salesman or something. You get no power. Why would you do it? I don't understand.
I don't know. If this were just a general BS kind of thing and we weren't actually going to try and talk about something hobby related, I'd I would relate another story that I've heard about the history of selling cars, but we're gonna try and talk about other things. Yang Yan Zhao, hello, good to see you. Yang Yan Zhao is in the doghouse with me. He's been having D&D live streams and videos about Dungeons and Dragons, and didn't ask me first. Didn't you guys know I'm the only D&D guy on YouTube? No, I'm kidding.
As long as he's talking about the proper D&D.
The proper D&D.
As long as he's talking about the proper D&D.
Well, I jump into the comments and try to fix
like
his oversights, Kyle. So I'm doing what I can. No, I'm just kidding. Yang Yan Zhao's live streams are his live streams and his videos are really good. And that's the beauty of YouTube is like I can say, hey, go sub to his channel. And by the way, you should go sub to Yang Yan Zhao's channel. But to quote Khan Noonien Singh, we are one big happy fleet. Oh, don't frown, Yang. Don't frown. It's all good. I love doing his live stream with him a couple of weeks ago. If you wanna shoot the link in the Discord, I'll paste it in the chats, Yang, for your YouTube channel.
Shoot the link, Yang. We really should be able to click on people's names in the chat, and it takes you to their profile or something like that. That seems like an obvious kind of feature that the Google should have, but they don't for whatever reason.
Yeah. So
Yang, shoot us the link or build the link, and we'll be able to post it in the chat for people to go and have a look at.
Yep.
We can pimp out all the shows, and eventually we'll if there's enough of these shows going on and enough people contributing, then we can eventually have our entire audience doing nothing but watch YouTube videos about D&D all day, except when they're actually playing D&D. And that would be a good end state. That would be D&D singularity. None of this the technology moves faster than anyone. Nah, fuck all that. The D&D singularity, where all we do is play D&D, eat, sleep, and then watch some videos about D&D, or read books about D&D. That's acceptable. So
yes. It's the quantum uncertainty principle. You're never sure if a D&D player is consuming Dungeons and Dragons by gaming or by just watching YouTube videos or reading about gaming. He's there, but if you observe it, the waveform collapses, and you make other physics jokes happen that I'm running out of the vocabulary for.
Yeah, well, it's like when you're about to roll a d20. It's Schrodinger's kobold. You don't know if he's dead yet or not.
Exactly.
Because you haven't rolled the dice yet.
Well, I had to take...
Unless you're playing Han Master or Roll Master or something, and then you don't know until you find it on the chart.
Yeah. Then you start talking about like galactic years.
Yeah.
One galactic year later, I found the critical I needed.
So what have we got? Let's talk about converting campaigns and converting players. I thought you wanted to talk about X's again. You said that to me last time we chatted.
I wanted to talk about X's. Like
hexes.
Hexes. Oh, hexes.
Or something.
I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I thought you said X's. I'm like, God, I haven't dated in about 27 years.
So,
yeah, that conversation could get me in trouble. It's a good thing that the wife doesn't watch these. But no, I think we've got enough time to cover things. Although I would, and I said this the other day, I do want to do the hex population, hex crawling stream again with you. One, the audio the first time we did it is really screwed up. You're like barely above a whisper. Thank you, Discord. or whatever we were using to connect at the time. And two, I've had a few more ideas about it, but I don't want to go in cold. I want you and I to compare some notes and whatnot. But yeah, we can definitely touch on that. And it kind of goes a bit hand in glove because with it was Steve here over on the Discord asked, he said, I have some experience with WotC D&D, and I do. I have played, and extensively too, guys. I mean, I've never been shy about the fact, like, I know I put on my, my wizard hat and I make a big deal about, 1E forever. And that's very true. But here's the thing. For years, actually, probably in terms of a straight run, the longest job I've ever held was in a Musicland record store. Musicland, for those of you who don't know, was a massive corporate record store, media store in the United States from like the 1950s until the early 2000s, early mid 2000s. I think some of I think they still exist in some form or the other. But so I worked 6, 8, sometimes 10 or 12-hour retail shifts, and there was no my first job ever that wasn't hanging drywall with my dad was working in a mom and pop record store, where I would work 8 hours a day and have the store to myself, absolutely nothing going on, and I could listen to whatever I wanted, which was usually Metallica or Pink Floyd or Front 242, which drove the boss up the wall. But once I got into the corporate record store job, I didn't have that freedom. It was like, look, we're a cell in the organism that is Musicland. We were store 204. There were that many Musiclands, at least that many Musiclands, all over the United States. I mean, there was one at the time in the 90s when Times Square was cleaned up under Giuliani's watch in the 90s. There was a Musicland in Times Square that was open 24 hours a day. You could go in and buy a Prince or Whitney Houston or Nirvana CD or single at 4 a.m. if that's what you wanted to do.
That graveyard shift must have been really interesting.
Oh yeah, in a graveyard shift.
You get at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, in a music store in New York City. But so yeah, I didn't go in
and wandering monsters.
Yeah, yeah, no shit roll for wandering monsters. But I had to listen to pop music all day long. Every once in a while, when something edged close enough, like when Metallica's new album released, we played it in store a little bit. And I will say that it did turn me on to some stuff that I never would have listened to if I had never had that job. And I am now at the stage in my life where I like all kinds of music, every type of music. I don't like every example of every type of music. So like if you say, hey, I want to listen to some rap, I'll say, great, let's put on some Run DMC or some Big Daddy Kane or some LL Cool J or something like that. I don't want to listen to like the mumble rap that's coming out right now, like a SoundCloud rapper whose face looked like it was attacked by a rabid Sharpie. I don't give a shit about, right? But 3rd edition was the same way. My friends were playing it, and if I wanted to game, that was the game. But that doesn't mean I liked it all. But I did play it extensively, I was fairly immersed in it. So to answer your question, EOTB, if somebody is coming from those editions, and Kyle and I, we've discussed this, and I will absolutely turn the mic over to Kyle on this because he has the tongue for it. When somebody comes from a game and they play like my demo AD&D games, or original D&D is almost better because, it's like, here's the size character sheet you need for OD&D. It's got the back for you to write your treasure on. It's got the front for all your stats. The first thing they're struck by is, wow, there's nothing on this character sheet. And I say, that's exactly right, because there's nothing you can't do. People in 3rd edition and even late 2nd edition and 3.5 and the edition that came after 3.5 and Pathfinder, and it's gotten a little bit better in 5th edition. But that middle run of D&D and D&D alikes were so skill heavy that everybody at the table is like this.
Yeah, there's one blogger, I wish I could remember who it was, but it was a good article. It called it the drop-down menu effect. It just said that when players come from playing computer games, they kind of looked for you'd have the drop-down menu to apply skill X to situation Y. And he said, so when they came from the computer games, they tended to, when something happens in the game, okay, what do you guys do? Everyone would look down at their character sheet to see what skill to apply. But you look down at a D&D, early edition D&D character sheet, or Classic Traveller, or anything like that, and there's nothing there. It's just straight dex, Constitution, So there's nothing there. So then the player then looks up and looks around the table at the other players. So the minimalism, if you like, in the game design actually encourages more interaction at the game table. So rather than being 3 to 6 individuals with your individual skill and so on, each doing your own thing, you're more of a team. Because you look around the table and you go, okay, well, yeah, guys, as the GM says, what should we do? So you spend more time talking with each other. And so it makes it a more of a social and cooperative experience, I think, that kind of minimalism in the design. Now, a well-designed skill system can, in fact, do that as well. But it has to be really well-designed, and they're usually not. They usually go for a lot more detail than thinking about, okay, how can this make easier cooperation and encourage cooperation at the game table. So that's what I get out of those earlier editions, that it encourages more game cooperation.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I've told this story before, but briefly, I ran an OD&D demo game at my FLGS, Gods and Monsters. I've talked about them a lot. And some people sat down to play, and, they saw the Dwarven Forge and the miniatures out, which is eye candy for me, right? I don't count spaces and shit like that. I just, the first time a person sees me reach over with a pencil or a pointer and trip an actual mechanical trap that knocks a miniature over or something like that, they want to play. They don't give a damn what's on the rule books. They want to see more of that stuff. So, it's like the scene in Mad Max when they buy him the V8 Interceptor and the chief is disgusted and it's like, we're using candy to keep our patrol officers in line now. Well, it's kind of the same thing. But I had a bunch of, like 4 people crammed into a spot where one person had been sitting before because they wanted to see the stuff on the table. But again, I handed them note cards and said, take a couple minutes, roll 3d6 for your stats. 2 of the 4 people had played 4th edition D&D a few times. And after the 3rd or 4th time, and the other 2, I guess, through osmosis, grokked. I mean, it's you've got to live under a rock to not at least know a little bit what a role-playing game is. But after the 3rd or 4th time they asked me, they said, oh, can I do that? Because there's nothing on here that says, yeah, you can absolutely do that. and they friggin' fell in love with it.
Well, it's sort of like it's I hesitate to use a political term, but I do think it's kind of a libertarian approach to gaming. So you could sort of the two axes of libertarian authoritarian. You've got that which is not expressly prohibited is permitted. That's the libertarian side. And then the authoritarian side is that which is not expressly permitted is prohibited. So if you have a more kind of dense game design, dense game design tends to be more authoritarian. Whatever you can do is written on your character sheet. If it's not there, you can't do it. And then you've got the more libertarian approach. Well, there's nothing written on your game sheet, a character sheet, so what do you want to do? And a few things might be expressly prohibited to you. Magic users can't use swords.
Right.
Fighters normally cannot cast spells. Clerics have to use can't use edged weapons, and so on. There's a few things that are expressly prohibited, but everything else is permitted. Yep. You don't have to be a thief to hide behind a bush. The thief just has the extra ability of hiding in shadows. So when people are used to a more kind of constricted game design, it does take them a little while, but it doesn't. It's kind of a mindset thing, and simply, as I said, seeing the character sheet just being something like the size of this book, except one page, not the whole 48 pages. Seeing that immediately tells them this is different. I'm very much in favour of letting people know what it's like from the beginning. The introduction to things. So the introduction to Star Wars. If you're old enough, you sat there in 1977 in the cinema. If you're not old enough, you saw it later on, maybe on DVD or something. But then the music plays, and then there's that big stream of text. Here's the backstory, and it's not really a backstory. It's just telling you that there's been fighting going on for some years. So it's a galactic empire, and there's fighting going on. And now we're going to zoom in on these little rebel guys, right? So it starts with the big picture, and then it goes down to the small. It gives you enough of the big picture for you to start with the story, and then they develop it more as the movies go on. Then there's the great book 1984. It was it starts with something like, it was a rainy day in April and the clocks were striking 13. So it starts with a very mundane thing that a million books have started with, describing the weather at the time. But then the clocks were striking 13. And to an Englishman with the 1 to 12 and 1 to 12 clock, this immediately tells him there's something different about this one.
Mm-hmm.
There's something different going on. So I'm very much in favour of, right from the start, you let them know it's something different. Now, as Dungeon Master with D&D, you don't even have to say that. As soon as they see the character sheet, they sit down and you go, well, 3d6 down the line. Okay, yep, you can be a fighter. Now you roll your hit points. Okay, now roll your starting wealth. Okay, choose equipment from amongst that. Get some armor, weapon, maybe a 10-foot pole, that sort of thing. And then character generation is done in 10 minutes. As soon as that happens, they know this is something different. And they'll figure it out for themselves without you having to sit down and give them a little lecture on game philosophy or something. As soon as they roll up their character and look at the character sheet, they realize this is something different. And then you start play. As they say, show, don't tell. And if you show during play and you have an inclusive rather than exclusive idea of what the character can do, that if it's not expressly prohibited for them to do it, then they can do it. Or at most they have to make a roll. If you do that, people cotton on to the play style pretty damn quickly, I find.
Yes. They
cotton on to it pretty quickly. The ones who've had some sort of tabletop gaming experience, even God forbid 5th edition, the ones who struggle, I find, are the ones who've only had computer gaming experience. And that's really, it's not so much the game, it's just they're not used to playing with others. basically, because most computer games are just the person playing by themselves. And even if they're an online game, the default is that other people will kill you on sight and take your stuff. So
Yeah.
they're the only ones who struggle. But if they've got any kind of tabletop gaming experience, they're usually fine pretty quickly. And they usually have a kind of, I don't want to say revelation, it kind of overstates it, but it's like, oh wow, you can actually die in this game. And I remember with one player, Paul, saying it, and I'm going, yeah, sorry, man, that sometimes the dice go that way, and I felt a bit sorry. He's like, no, this is great, and he started rolling up another character. What he was quite happy about, because now surviving a combat meant something, because he could actually die. But surviving one meant something. So, yeah, they get on. I really haven't, over the years, I haven't found a problem with people getting onto it, unless, as I said, they've only played computer games. And then I think it's less that they're going from one style of play to another, that they're going from computer games to tabletop. I think, if you sat them down to play 5th Ed or something, they'd probably struggle as well.
Yeah.
Being on their own.
I mean,
or having this player versus everyone kind of thing. Like, could I be a carry keyboard assassin, paladin?
And I've mentioned this before, but I have played Pathfinder. And we started the game. They're like, yeah, we're going to be playing at this level. What do you want to do? And I mean, I knew this was a very chimeric group. They would change shape at the drop of a hat and find a new game to play. So I knew the game wouldn't terribly have legs. So I said, are there bards in Pathfinder? I said, yeah. And I said, can I play a high-level bard? Sure. So I said, fine, I'm playing Robert Plant. I'm playing a dimension-hopping, magically empowered Robert Plant. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was just stupid fun. It was a superhero game with fantasy trappings, basically, the level we were playing at. And it was loads of just, of dumb fun. But we got to a point where one of the players in the game he did something. He summoned an animal that now, I don't know enough about Pathfinder, so don't start peppering me with questions about this if you do. But if the animal dies, just the creature out of the Pathfinder monster manual, whatever it is, if it dies, it explodes in like a burst of holy fire that also inflicts damage to the enemies. So it's kind of one of those, suicide bomber kind of creatures. And they exist in D&D too. The Zeg-Ya and Yag-Z, the negative and positive energy sphere creatures. Anyway, well, this guy summoned a couple of them. They weren't just there. He summoned them. Monster summoning. And so the question came, because they're summoned, when the summoned ones die, do they do the same thing? Because summon monster in Pathfinder, it like basically brings into existence a celestial version or an abyssal version, an infernal version of the creature. It's not like 4 actual flesh and blood orcs pop in out of nowhere to fight for you. They're created from extra planar stuff. So the question came, because a couple of them died, did they do that? And that's a fairly simple thing for a DM to decide. Yes, they do. No, they don't. If you can't make up your mind, on a 1 through 3, they do. I rolled a 5. They don't. We stopped the game for 45 minutes digging through Pathfinder rules trying to find it. Or rather, they did. I don't own anything Pathfinder related. And finally, I messaged the DM and I'm like, David, roll a d6. On a 1 through 3, they do. On a 4 through 6, they don't. And he messages me back very tersely. I'm still looking. So, we sat there for another 10 minutes. I got another beer and put my feet up. But this is the kind of thing that in an AD&D game, if somebody said, look, I want to specifically gate in a Zeg-Yi, I would say, okay. Assign it the appropriate chance of succeeding. It shows up, it fights the monsters, they drop it to 0 hit points, which means it dies. Does it explode or not? I would say that it does. Or I would say that it doesn't. Or if I couldn't decide, yeah, it explodes. And that's it.
Yeah.
It's the same from a DMing perspective as it is from a playing perspective. The game is about rulings, not rules. I've been doing this stream of teaching, hopefully, teaching folks how to play AD&D from a DMing perspective. Well, I started from a player's perspective. Now I'm on to a DMing perspective, which is essentially an endless job. I mean, teach somebody to DM. Well, how long have you got? So yeah, it's all rulings with me. It's not rules, it's rulings, if that makes sense. But
I mean, the main thing is just to get people playing.
Yeah.
Once they start playing, they get it. It's they get it. It's the same as the stuff I do here. You could give a long verbal explanation, or it'd be like this book, which has 64 pages just on the squat. You could do that long explanation. You could just get someone under the bar and teach them. I could teach an idiot to squat in about 10 minutes, a physical idiot. And if they got some previous training, about 5 minutes. It's not that complicated once they get under the bar and they do it. And it's the same. It's the same with this stuff. Once, there's a lot of pages in the books, but once a person sits down to play, it's not that complicated. And people instinctively know how to roleplay. As Clash Bowley likes to say, children, 3-year-olds, instinctively roleplay. They'll dress up as doctors and they'll roleplay through that. There'll be cowboys and Indians or cops and robbers or whatever. And they just do it automatically. It comes naturally to people. And the rules and so on is just to sort of guide it in a more or less coherent direction.
Yeah.
So it doesn't go all over the place. People, it's once they sit down, so really, converting players from 5th ed to 1st ed or whatever is just a matter of sitting them down to play. And once they sit down to play, to make sense to them.
Yep.
As I said, the major thing that they've got to grasp is that which is not expressly prohibited is permitted. As you said, that yeah, sure, you can do that. Give us a dice roll. Mm-hmm. I've told the story many times, but it's worth mentioning again for those who haven't heard it, and to remind the others. But there was a campaign where the party went in and they saw a couple of sarcophagi, and the lid started moving. So the magic user cast Hold Portal on one and had the party go and sit on top of the other one. And then he got out a rock drill, and he'd asked for a rock drill because he said, we don't have a thief. I can't remember, they either didn't have a thief in the party, or he's like, he's only got 25% chance to pick locks or whatever it was. So I want to back up. So he got a rock drill so he could drill into locks. And he used the rock drill to drill through the lid of the sarcophagus. And he put two holes in it. and then he poured oil in, and then he lit it up. It had so wiped out the mummy, and then he did the other one on the held one. Where are the rules? Probably GURPS has got some rules for how quickly you can drill into stone with a rock drill.
I guarantee you that Cinnabar has rules for drilling speed.
And then, you'd have to figure out what kind of stone a sarcophagi made out of. I have no clue, but I would have to decide. But what level were they? I don't know. They weren't more than third level, that's for sure. What was his strength? What was his intelligence? How many hit points did he have? One spell. All he had to do was be able to cast one spell, hold portal, and that was done. And a low-level party was able to defeat mummies without any risk of any injury to themselves. Of course, then I had to make saving throws for the magic items that were in the sarcophagi with the mummies because they'd been burned. So they lost a couple of scrolls, but I think they'd rather lose a couple of scrolls than lose a couple of characters. So
yeah,
that's nowhere covered in the rules. I'm sure even 5th edition doesn't have rules for drilling, using a rock drill to drill into a sarcophagus lid. And also had to rule strong as a mummy. Can a mummy lift up the sarcophagus lid? Well, obviously, if they're going to be able to get out and harass the PCs. But can he lift it with 5 party members sitting on it? What are their individual weights? What's the total weight? Can he lift it? And I just went, no, he can't. Because it seemed cooler to say, no, he can't. And I liked the image, too, of the party sort of scrabbling on, when people do that, like the most people that they can cram into a phone box and stuff, or most people they can cram into a mini miner. I have this mental picture of these guys crammed on top of the sarcophagus lid, and it kind of shifting around and them shifting themselves around to not fall off.
Yeah.
Like I'm in a rowboat, it's shifting around and the thing going there and trying to push it up. And I just thought that was a hilarious image, so I allowed it.
There you go.
I didn't require them to roll to balance or whatever. It was cool. It was great.
So I think that I think that pretty much encapsulates the answer for EOTB there. I got a good one here from Yang, actually. Says, now it's a bit broad, Yang, so I'm going to ask you a question back, because Yang says maybe converting campaigns between editions too. Do you mean campaigns like I've been playing with 3rd edition, I've been playing with Pathfinder, I've been playing with 5th edition, whatever, and I want to bring it into 1st edition, or I want to bring my 2nd edition into OD&D, or I want to take my AD&D into 5th edition? Or do you mean, here's a published campaign setting for World of Greyhawk, but it's for AD&D, but I want to use it with 5th edition. No changes, basically. If you want to use it with 5th edition, no changes. If you're the type who has a lot of deities showing up, you're going to want to tart up the deities, because stupidly high-end 3rd edition D&D characters like 20th plus level can match AD&D deities pound for pound, and that includes their special deity only abilities. So if you're going to 3rd, 4th, or 5th edition with the World of Greyhawk box set, tart up the gods. Otherwise, nothing need be done. If you're talking about I've spent X amount of time in this campaign running it under this rule set, and now I want to convert it to this rule set, depending on the distance between rule sets, like, you've been running Forgotten Realms in 5th edition, and now you've got OD&D, or you've got Swords and Wizardry, the open source OD&D. You have a lot of math leg work to do, unless you want to do it on the fly. I would dare.
So I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't convert a fifth edition. If I'd been running a fifth edition one and then went to first, I wouldn't do it. I would just start again. I'd just do the classic. We're going to play this for a while. We'll set this one aside for a bit. Back to it. Do that. When that little trick where the group is tired of the campaign, but nobody really wants to admit that it's over, or nobody wants to hurt the GM's feelings. So you do the D&D equivalent or the gaming equivalent of let's do lunch sometime when you're leaving, a workplace. You set the campaign aside temporarily, and you never return to it. That's what I would do, and I'd just start with the first edition. It's just much simpler that way. It's less headaches because everyone will be bitching and moaning. But my character used to be able to do this, and they will look at it, if they're used to dealing with Bob the fighter who has this long list of feats and abilities, and then they come to first edition where they don't have that, they won't be able to wrap their brain around it. That'll be an obstacle. All their preconceptions about how they used to play Bob the fighter will now be an obstacle to their playing first edition. I would just start again. You now have Jim Bob the fighter. There, and just roll it up. Roll them up. Start again. So that they can start blank without any preconceptions, without taking that sort of mental baggage in with them. I would just start again. You just choose the rough first edition equivalent, and you don't fuss over it too much, because it's not about whether the thing has 32 hit points or 46 hit points. That doesn't matter. It's like there's so much shit that just doesn't matter. Those of you guys who watched the brief amount of D&D play that Bill and I did, my character walked 20 foot into the dungeon and fell into a pit and died. And he could have had 1800 strength and +3 plate mail, and he still would have died.
Yeah. And I mean,
and there was no other party to fish him out. So people with the stats, they'd be like, that shit doesn't matter. What matters is how you play it. So yeah, you're converting some module, just put the first edition equivalents in there. Don't worry about it. I'm not the best one to talk because I don't use modules. I just roll everything up. I was only once going to use a module in the last couple of years, and that's when I got Bill's module that he'd written up, and I was going to play it on the free RPG day, and that was in 2020. So that's obviously that didn't happen. So
we'll hold that hope that it can one day, man.
Yeah, but yeah. So I haven't been able to. I haven't run a module for years. I just roll shit up.
Yeah, I mean
that's the Hex on Up episode.
I'm an inveterate lover of the classic modules, but I was talking about this the other day, any module that's got a lot of humanoids in it, you absolutely need to be throwing witch doctors and shaman into those modules. There's a grand total of 128 orcs scattered around on this level of the dungeon. Oh yeah, there's going to be some witch doctors. There's going to be some shaman amongst them. And when you tell the players that there's a guy in the... Huh? Do what?
What does the book say? You always go to the book and to the dice.
Right.
Orc lairs. Okay, for every 30 orcs encountered, there will be a leader and 3 assistants. These orcs will have 8 hit points each, being the biggest, strongest, meanest in their group. If 150 or more orcs are encountered, there will be the following additional figures with the band: a sub-chief and 3 to 18 guards, each having armor class 4, 11 hit points, and fighting as monsters with 2 hit dice. If the orcs are not in their lair, there's a 20% chance they'll be escorting a train of 1 to 6 carts and 10 to 60 slave bearers, bringing supplies and loot to their chief or to a stronger orc tribe. The carts will hold goods worth from 10 to 1,000 gold pieces. Too bad if you get the 10 gold piece cart, and each slave will bear goods worth from 5 to 30 gold pieces. If such a train is indicated, double the number of leaders' assistants. Now, any mention of okay, in the lair, there may be a chief and 5 to 30 bodyguards. Females equal to 50% number of males, and some young. If the lair is underground, there's a 50% chance there'll be 2 to 5 ogres living with the orcs. No, they don't mention wizards and stuff, magic users and shamans and things. But of course, you can put them in.
Well, I mean, I would say
that
would fall under the auspices of assistance. You know, I gotta keep these guys in line. What keeps them in line but a little bit old hellfire and brimstone preaching every God's day. But yeah,
orcs are cruel and hate living things in general, but they particularly hate elves, and will always attack them in preference to other creatures. Poor elf player. Sorry, Legolas.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I think Legolas
They take slaves for work, food, and entertainment, torture, etc., but not elves, whom they kill immediately.
Yeah. I think Legolas, by the time of the Lord of the Rings, was about 6,000 years old and had come across with the first elves, like before there was a sun, when the world was just lit by the Cimmerals. He can take a one-hit die orc easily. But no, I would, in a heartbeat, I would take a published module or campaign setting, and when those roles for humanoids come up, man, absolutely, because the look on players' faces when you say there's a guy in the background and he's got a staff with some rat skulls and a nasty looking dream catcher with an eye, mummified eye in the middle instead of a piece of tourist shop quartz and all that stuff, raises his hands and says, "Hey, how are you? Hey, how are you?" And your potions turn to water, your prayer spell doesn't work, and your bless is no longer active, and your bard song just kind of falters. The look on the players' faces when you do that is priceless. Always include tribal spellcasters, guys, even if the module doesn't call for it. Make the change. You'll be glad you did.
That's why an experienced player knows you always kill the wizard first.
Always kill the wizard first.
Well, that's what the ranged weapons are for.
Yes.
To go over the heads of all the underlings and then to the wizard in the back.
The flung oil, so when he raises his hands and starts the "Hey, how are you? Hey, how are you?" You know which one to throw the missile weapons at, the flaming oil and so on and etc. So,
or as we said in one campaign, straight to the boss fight.
Yeah.
When none of this churning through the whole dungeon and that, but just straight for the boss fight.
Straight to the boss.
Avoid unnecessary encounters definitely applies to wandering monsters, but it also applies to most of the dungeon, honestly. So if you know where the big boss is and all his treasure, you go straight to him.
Oh yeah. Well, if you never played G1, first of all, you owe it to yourself to play G1. You really, really, really owe it to yourself and your players to DM, even if you don't do the rest of the G series, but you should. And the D series, again, you should. You should really play G1 because there is a Donnybrook of an encounter in that, where if the party ignores all the ancillary rooms and passages and is just like, we're going to go up this 40-foot wide hallway, make a left, and there's double doors, and we hear what sounds like a party mixed with a fight, mixed with a celebration going on inside. Inside the room are something like 22 hill giants of various hit points, 40 ogres, and now granted the orc slaves are just going to be looking to get the hell out of the way. But that's a go straight for the boss and kind of get exactly what, get exactly what you might expect would happen type situation. But yeah, no, I'm a big proponent of modules, and I think there's a lot of I kind of view modules as they're like the great rock albums. Like when people say, "Yeah, man, I love rock music." Yeah, what do you like? It's Led Zeppelin. Oh, great. What do you think of Led Zeppelin? Led Zeppelin 1. Oh, I don't really listen to their albums, man. I just got jam tapes from them. And
yeah. I think I figured out how to describe our difference in jamming and play style. Bill, I think because you've got the great rock albums. You want to produce and play the great rock albums. Me, I'm more the jazz guy. I fearlessly plagiarize from everyone else and then just to put some random riffs in between.
And
that's the difference.
I will gladly accept that. I want to put my phones on my studio headphones here from AKG, and I want to listen to, I want to listen to Led Zeppelin 2 or Goat's Head Soup from the Stones, or even Pet Sounds from the Beach Boys when I want to mellow out. And Kyle wants to get together like 21 musicians in his garage and, hey, Kyle, I brought over a Herbie Hancock CD. Get that the fuck out of here, man. Come on.
I like there's a couple of great vids out there, like this Finnish band that dress up like little stereotypical hillbillies. They got like the overalls with no shirt on underneath and stuff.
Yeah. And
the straw hillbillies, and they're playing on drums and stuff, and they're doing Thunderstruck on accordion and metal drums and stuff like that. It's great. It's great.
Awesome. That's great. I love it when you get stuff out of.
I'm going to put the vid for people who look later. So, yeah, I think that sort of stuff is great.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure.
That's my approach to playing D&D.
Oh, okay. So we gotta throw this one out here for Russ. Rusty said, because he's going to be listening tonight, he will listen if we do a breakdown of the locate plants spell. That is the biggest meme joke between he and I, because so let me go over this real quick, and we can have a quick live go at seeing if we can make this thing work. Let's see. So locate plants is a second level druid spell that honestly seems like Gary wrote just to have something in the book. Locate plants, level 2, range 0, duration 1 turn per level, area of effect 1 foot diameter per level circle. Now, one thing that I think Rusty's overlooking is 10 feet. That's 10 yards out of outdoors. Or no, wait, no, it's not. No. It's 10 feet because area of effect doesn't increase to yards out of doors, only range. All right, so it is just 10 feet. When this spell is used by a druid, he or she is able to locate any desired type of plant within the area of effect. Note, the plant type must be singular and concentrated upon. The spell's area of effect centers on and moves with the druid. So, it's a second level spell, and if we look at second level druid spells, these are the options that you've got for second level druid spell other than locate plants. Bark skin, charm person or mammal, create water, cure light wounds. If I found out my druid had memorized locate plants instead of cure light wounds and I'm bleeding out on the ground, Oh, you want to return to Earth? Well, you're going to be fertilizer as soon as I get on my feet here. Feign death. Fire trap. Fire trap. Heat metal. Obscurement. Produce flame. Trip and warp wood. But no, locate plants. And I can't even with locate plants. That is the most ridiculous, memey thing. What could you I am honestly trying to think. So you think, oh, okay, well, it could be the druid could find hostile plants. If you're within 10 feet of them, odds are they found you. All right, I'm second level. I'm going to cast locate plants because we're about to enter a bog, and I want to know if we're going to come up on any shambling mounds. Dude, if we get within 20 feet of a shambling mound, we're already dead. I mean, I guess if you're a druid and you really wanted to impress a date, hey, baby, why don't I find you a 4-leaf clover for this special occasion?
Yang says, locate the poison ivy and force your enemy.
Locate the poison... Let me see here. Locate the poison ivy
and force your enemies into it.
Oh, yeah, because within like 20 or 30 minutes, they're going to be
Yang
really
has got a vicious imagination.
They're going to be really uncomfortable with itching. Oh my gosh, those adventurers, they pushed us into these, leaves of 3. Oh, this is very itchy. This is highly inconvenient. Whatever will we do? But it's like, okay, well, green slime. Green slime's a plant, right, DM? Green slime? Yeah, sure. It sure is. I cast locate plants. Is there any green slime nearby? Well, fucking look on the floor, genius. Do you see green slime on the floor? Congratulations. You wasted a spell slot that could have gone to cure light wounds or bark skin or anything.
I don't know, man. Occasionally in the books, you kind of get a glimpse of he was kind of pursuing an idea and he thought, okay, maybe I could flesh that out later, and then he forgot about it.
As lean
like
as
every game master does. And I sort of, I wonder if maybe the locate plant thing, there was maybe going to be a herbalism kind of thing where maybe druids could make potions from different plants that they'd found or something like that. It might have, I have a feeling like his mind might have been going that way. And then, he went on to do the, if you're not wearing a helm, there's a 1 in 6 chance that you'll be struck on the head kind of thing. Do some other rule, and then forgot about that one. There seem to be quite a lot of things like that in AD&D.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of the beginnings of an idea that was never quite pursued to the end. And then later on in 2nd edition, they did splat books for that.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And you see why it was better not to pursue those ideas.
Well, since we know you're alive and well in the chat, Yang, you gotta... What was your question about campaigns? Did we answer your question about campaigns? Type that in. Let us know in chat. Make sure that Alyssa Green Slime is hidden by friggin' water. Yeah. EOTB knows what's going on there. There's an infamous stretch of green slime in White Plume Mountain that's under like 2 feet of water, and it's as wide as the hallway. So yeah, you've got just enough time to realize something's gone horribly wrong to ruin a dagger by scraping the slime off your feet with it and not wind up turning to green slime. Yeah, Kyle talking about this is kind of commented. It's in computer programming. This is commented out code, I think, is what locate plants is. It's like I want to make something in the application that does something. So I'm going to write like the introductory part of that code, but then comment it out and then come back to it later. And then the app gets published and you're like, damn, what was I going to do with that? Well, it's not important. If you go through the binaries of software, you can find so many like dangling unfinished sections of code that it'll drive you bonkers. Here's a case in point.
I noticed that whenever I see online discussions about some computer game I'm playing, there's always somebody saying like, "Oh, I dug into the code and I found this unused feature that they had in a similar game." And it had been worked on here, but they obviously decided not to pursue it.
Yeah.
And I always wonder, like, what fraction of the software is actually used, that program, that 5 gigabytes, is it like 4.5 that's being used, or is it just like 0.5 and the rest is just baggage left over from previous versions or things that didn't get pursued? You always wonder.
A couple of interesting and one frankly hilarious story on that very topic. When I was younger, one of my favorite games on the Amiga computer, multimedia computer, for the younger crowd, but it was a lot of fun to play games on, and from like 1986 when it came out, or 1985 when it came out, probably till about 1989, PCs and Macs could not do what the Amiga could do. I remember reading a story from Jean-Louis Gasset, who was highly like way up on the food chain engineer at Apple, who said, when the Amiga came out, we panicked because here we had the Macintosh, and we said we were like cutting edge. We were pushing the envelope on personal computing. We could make like beeps and 8-bit wave tone sound effects, and had a 9-inch black and white screen. And here's a computer that had a palette of 4,096 colors, 16-channel 8-bit sound. You could plug it into any size color monitor you wanted, etc. So he said, for like a year we were terrified of the thing, and then we realized that Commodore marketing was inept, so we didn't worry about it anymore. But I had a game, an Apache AH-64 Apache simulator on the machine called Gunship 2000, and I really liked it. And I was getting ready to switch over to the PC. And when I looked at the PC version, they were completely different games, almost. The core gameplay, you're flying in an Apache, you're flying in Desert Storm, hypothetical war in Europe, etc., was still there. The PC had all these different theaters of battle, different vehicles you could see on the battlefield. So very, very different. And one day I was bored, and I put one of the game discs in, and I opened up a hex editor and started looking at the Amiga's game code. And it was all in there, but it was all commented out. The PC and Amiga version were identical, except for some reason Microprose said, nah, they don't want that. Just don't put that in there. The other one is everybody who's played Doom, classic Doom and Doom 2, knows that doors open up. Just like you come to a door, you hit the use button and the door opens up. A lot of people think that that's the only way that doors could work. If you go to the secret hell level, the first secret hell level actually, and the second one, they're set in Wolfenstein 3D. Rather appropriate that the deepest reaches of hell are populated by Nazis. Well, if you ever played Wolfenstein 3D, the doors in Wolfenstein 3D open to the left and to the right. The Wolfenstein levels in Doom 2, the doors open up. But if you dig in the Doom 2 code, which was freely released by id Software, and people have made their own extensions of and versions of it, there's the code, but it's commented out to make doors open sideways. John Carmack wrote the code, but he didn't bother implementing it for some reason. Now the funny one, and I promise I'm not going to spend too much more time on game code. A few years ago, when Fallout 76 was released by Bethesda, people were very unhappy with it. And they said, look, it was buggy. A bunch of the features that were supposed to be in it weren't. They got a lot of flack. And one of the things that people said was, you're just using the same game engine that you've been using for years, aren't you? And they said, no, this is complete. What are you even talking? The same game engine? That's ridiculous. No, this is a new experience. And they're all like, yeah, because it's bugging out in ways exactly like Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 3, and all of its expansion packs. Oblivion, all of its expansion packs, Skyrim, all of its expansion packs, all the way back to Morrowind. It's acting just like that. And they were insistent, no, this is new code. This isn't even the Gamebryo engine. As if nobody would look. And sure enough, somebody dug into the main exe. It's the Gamebryo engine, because there's all this stuff. The Gamebryo engine, Bethesda actually bought from another company when they made Morrowind in like 1999. And they've just been expanding on it and building on it. And to be fair, it's made some pretty neat games. But dude, don't lie to people who have nothing but time and hex editors. And so I think locate plants is commented game code. Go ahead, Kyle. I'm sorry. I've run my mouth enough.
Yeah, I was like, why would you lie anyway? I freely admit to plagiarizing things. I mean, when I run longer campaigns, it's a mini game for the players to figure out what I plagiarized from.
I honestly think it is.
You got that from that movie, didn't you? You bastard.
I think it's because Todd Howard huffs his own farts. I think Todd Howard thinks his customer base are idiots, and everything he does is brilliant. I honestly believe that. There's no other excuse for it. I'll tell you a funny story about ripping off games, and this isn't even my story. I wish my buddy Jeff could be on the stream because he can tell it with a lot more aplomb than I can. One night back in 1983, 1982, a buddy of his called him up and said, dudes, we're playing. Everybody is coming over to my place tonight. They lived in California. Everybody's coming over to my place Friday. We're going to spend the weekend playing. I have a fantastic new Call of Cthulhu campaign, and we're going to run right through it. And then we're going to go, we'll check out a movie. It was summer of that year. We'll check out some movies. So everybody came over, and they had basically a 2-day long sleepover, and they played this awesome Call of Cthulhu adventure where they're researchers and investigators investigating a dark cult in the middle of India in the 1930s, and they wound up there because the plane they were on was hijacked by Chinese mobsters, and the whole story starts in media res with a shootout in a bar where they rescue this lounge singer. And so they watch it, and they're high-fiving the guy. Some characters died, some went insane, some survived, and they're like, "Oh my God!" And then he rips the guy's heart out, and he's yelling, "Kalima." The dude had gotten tickets to a preview premiere of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. He didn't just steal ideas; he played the movie for them. Down to the banquet of bugs and monkey brains and live eels.
I love it.
So Sunday night, the movie came out on Friday, and Sunday night they go to the movies to see Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, they were so pissed at him because he basically spoiled the entire fucking movie.
I love it. That's brilliant. I pick and choose bits. And I tack them together with the randomness of the dice. That's my games. Plagiarism, tack together with the dice.
Yeah.
But so we've talked about computer games and how they'll influence your play at the tabletop. But to finish up, I'd like to talk about the reverse and how there's tabletop lessons for computer games. So recently, because we're in lockdown number, I'm not even joking. We're in lockdown number 6. Today's the 221st day of total lockdown since we started.
The 221st day of 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, we won't get political. We'll bore people. And I'm sure everyone's over talking about that shit. That's why they're listening to gaming. But anyways, because of that, I've been doing some online gaming. And a part of that was starting to play DayZ. I haven't met any Norwegian prime ministers yet. There's a Netflix TV series called Occupied where Norway decides to stop exporting oil because they want to be green, and they've invented fusion energy or something. And the European Union says, you're going to keep exporting it. And they go, no, we're not. And so the European Union gets the Russians to invade and occupy them. Anyway, the Norwegian Prime Minister organises the resistance. He has secret meetings while he's playing DayZ. He meets the characters in that. That's the first I'd heard of the game. It was a real game. So I've been playing that recently, and it's set in the one of the worlds, Rus, former Soviet Republic, fallen into civil war, blah blah blah, and then at some point zombies took over. It was a mod, an armor mod. They said he had zombies. So anyway, instead of these zombies, the zombies, it's as the player's handbook said, avoid unnecessary encounters. The zombies are mostly an unnecessary encounter.
Yep.
They're effectively a wandering monster because they very rarely have anything to carry around. They rarely have any loot. And it'll be pretty minimal if they do. So all they do, and you can usually beat them up fairly easily as long as you take them one at a time. So if you do melee, you take them one at a time, unless you're really unlucky. But if you shoot them, okay, that kills them more quickly, but then others go, what's that? And they hit, and pretty soon you're dealing with 20 of the bastards, and they overwhelm you. Usually they just beat you up and they knock you out, and you wake up, 30 seconds or a minute later. But then if you're unlucky that you're still surrounded by zombies, they're ignoring you because you're unconscious or they think dead. But then you've got to sneak out. But they whittle away your resources. All your equipment has states. So there's pristine, damaged, badly damaged, and ruined. Which I thought was a really brilliant idea because it's actually exactly what I did in Conflict. I didn't plagiarize that. That was my own thing, and it just turned out convergent evolution. People dealing with the same problems came up with the same solutions.
Just so.
But anyway, so they whittle down your gear, and repair kits are much rarer than the gear is. So you end up constantly having to change out of these ruined clothes into new ones. But yeah, so if you deal with the zombies, you rarely get any loot, and you just whittle down your gear. You use up your resources without gaining anything. So you avoid unnecessary encounters. But encounters with other players can fall into the same thing because the players, you don't know their alignment. They could cooperate with you or not. So, like, I deliberately met up with a friend of mine, PJ, and we've been playing together. Anyway, PJ, his character had got a wound infection from a zombie, and it was declining and it was getting worse. And we'd given him some medicine. We were waiting to see if it took effect, and warming ourselves, drying ourselves by the fire. It was dark outside and it was raining, and that we're in this barn. And then we're chatting away, and then we're like, "Damn, is that a voice?" And we heard, "Follows, can I come in? I'm unarmed. Can I come in?" There's this plaintive Irish voice from outside in the rain. And and this guy came in, and he was a complete fresher, and we'd actually seen him earlier on when we were on our way to that village. I said, "Oh, yeah, I saw someone," and so PJ looks through with his binos. Oh, it's just a freshie, because you start, you spawn with just a t-shirt and shorts and runners, a bandage, a glow stick, and a piece of fruit. That's what he started with. And we'd seen him running across. Anyway, and he must have been following us and then seen that we started a fire and we weren't going around looking for other players to fight them or whatever. So he came and found us, and he warmed himself by the fire and that. And he told us that he had previously died. He'd been fully geared up, and he got swarmed by zombies and died somewhere on the road, and he was going and looking for his own corpse so he could loot it, which is a really kind of existentialist moment, I think. But especially since you can actually skin and quarter human corpses and eat their flesh. So you could actually eat your own deceased self, which is really even more bizarre. But you shouldn't. In the game, you get kuru, you go crazy and start laughing randomly if you eat human flesh. Anyway, so he said he was going to loot his own body and I said, "Oh, have you got any food?" And so he takes his pear and he puts it on the ground in front of me. No, I don't mean that. I mean, do you need any food? I said, "You're just starting out." So I gave him some food and a knife and blah, 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 and gave him some gear to start off, gave him what I had to spare. And he was very grateful, and he said, "Oh, look, listen, fellas, I'm just going to rush for it, try to rush for the zombies and rush in and grab all my stuff and then get out." He said, "But if I don't succeed," he said, my body's somewhere on the road between a couple of towns. You can have my stuff in there." So there was a good result of avoiding unnecessary encounters. We could have just shot, killed on sight, attacked the first person we saw. But we didn't, and so we got a nice little thing. Unfortunately, it was midnight and we were logging off. And after I logged off, I felt bad, and I said I should have gone with this guy Hickey to help him rescue his gear, and then he could have gone with me to find some medical supplies to help PJ. But it was midnight; it was time to go to bed anyway. So poor old Hickey over an island had to figure out things for himself, and I never found out, of course, how it goes. It's big. So the principle there is it's an open game table, so you just game in a friendly way with whoever shows up, and you avoid unnecessary encounters. You don't start fights, because that way you can have more adventures. On the other hand, where I failed to do this well, I had been so each area spawns appropriate loot. So houses have food and clothing, and hospitals have medical gear, and places like police stations tend to have body armor and firearms and stuff. So I'd been looting a police station. It was the middle of the night. It was dark out there, and had a light on my pistol. I was going around looking all the rest. This was an incautious thing to do. And the thing is that unless it's pitch black and you can't avoid just walking into walls and that, you don't need the light, because you could just press a button and do it. It's a vicinity check, and so anything that's in range shows up as something you can pick up, even if it's pitch black. It would have been more cautious not to do that, to rather than have my light around, because anyone who's passing by would have seen the light flashing around, and they know that's not a zombie. There's not going to be a zombie with a head torch on or something. So they would know it's another player. And so if they're hostile, or if they're inclined to kill you and take your stuff, then they just wait for you. And in fact, that's what happened. So I had all the light going on and that, and then okay, I've got what I wanted. So I turned the light off. I got the melee weapon, because like I said, you need the melee weapon for any zombies. And then I opened the door. And having opened the door, I looked at the front. There was nothing at the front. I stepped forward. I looked left. There was nothing. I looked right. And there's this guy crouching, sneaking towards me with night vision goggles. And I was opening my mouth to say hello. And he went pap, 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 into my center of mass. And I dropped. And it comes up with this big red screen saying, "You are dead." Looks like a New Order album or something. And that was it. And so I had to start again. With nothing. So, yeah. So avoid unnecessary encounters, and also avoid enticing unnecessary encounters. So when your characters are going through the dungeon, they're making a lot of noise, they're exploring, they're bashing open doors, my ruling as a game master is that you can have multiple attempts to bash open the door, but every attempt after the first, we make a wandering monster check as well.
Yep.
The monsters are in the dungeon and they just hear a crash. Oh, well, it's another monster. If they hear repeated crashes, they start getting curious and they come to have a look.
Exactly. I check after battles. I will roll for wandering monsters.
Yeah, there's that too, yeah. So I was going around rather uncautiously because I was going around in a place with a known amount of loot. I was going around flashing a torch around in the middle of the night so I could be seen. I didn't have night vision gear or anything like that. So I could only see if I had the light on, but if I have the light on, then that attracts zombies and obviously attracts the attention of hostile players as well. So I played in an incautious manner. It's exactly the same as when I was playing your D&D game and I walked 20 foot into the dungeon. I accepted the assurances of the kobolds and I walked in and fell into a pit and died. It's the same scenario. I was incautious. I didn't follow good dungeoneering principles. And in this case, I didn't follow good DayZ play principles to move around more cautiously. If you don't have night vision gear, just hole up at night, log off, have lunch, have your coffee or whatever, come and come back when you know it's going to be light within the game again and you'll have better visibility. So I was playing incautiously. Now, usually it's all right. So playing again last night, Pat and I, we bumped into another player and he was quite friendly in that and we helped him out. So we've encountered one-on-one. I've encountered 3 other players in the game other than those I invited, and 2 out of 3 of them were friendly. One was very, very unfriendly, and it was so stupid as well because I've been doing I go do care packages for newbies. I get together a knife and some food and some water and stuff, and I put them in a pack down by the beach where everyone spawns. So I've been accumulating this extra stuff. So I had 50 times more than the guy would have been able to carry. So whatever he wanted, I would have just fucking given to him anyway. But he was shoot first, ask questions later, which is a completely legitimate way to play.
Yes.
I just find it not as much fun because I'm looking for more. If I wanted a tactical challenge, I would just play Call of Duty or something by myself. I'm looking for more social stuff, so that's why I'm playing with that style. But obviously, he's playing for different reasons.
Yeah.
So he was a wandering monster. It's just a high-level wandering monster because he was all geared up. But again, what I'm saying is the intelligence of play is far more important than the gear because, okay, he had the night vision gear and he had some sort of rifle, semi-automatic rifle or whatever, but it didn't really matter because it didn't really matter what my gear was. I could have had the best guns in the game. I could have had 50 grenades or something, but I just walked out into the dark looking around going, huh? What? And so he surprised me. And, if you have surprise, you wipe the poor guy out. That's the way it goes, assuming, unless you've got systems of massive hit points or something like that. But if you've got a realistic kind of a system like this or DayZ, I hesitate for realistic because it's got zombies, but you guys know what I mean.
Right.
It doesn't really matter what all your gear is. If someone catches you by surprise, you're dead. There's always a sniper, Someone can always just up and shoot you.
Well, I think in this case that AD&D perfectly mirrors that situation. Just think about it. He had total surprise.
Yeah.
And he had a missile weapon. And per the AD&D surprise rules, in total surprise, 4 terms of missile rate of fire, a segment equates to a round. So he was able to put, if we assume that a semi-auto rifle does, a pull of the trigger every segment, which is a bit unrealistic, but
it would probably be more because short bow would get 2 attacks.
Right.
So you could have had the equivalent of a short bow, 2 attacks, 4 rounds, or 4 segments. He gets 8 attacks. He's going to take you out.
Yeah.
Unless you got 100 hit points, he's going to take you out.
I'll relate real quick because I don't. I know we're kind of coming up on the point where, I mean, I don't know about your schedule, Kyle. People keep spinning me on tangents, and I could sit here until my damn batteries run out in my studio gear. But my experience with DayZ was like 7 or 8 years ago. My buddy Greg asked me to play. And up to that point, my only zombie survival game that I had played was Left 4 Dead, which is based on the Source engine by Valve, which is a bit more heroic, shall we say. Where you can accidentally shoot somebody 4 times with a SPAS 12 shotgun, and as long as they've got a bottle of Tylenol to down, they're good till they can use a med kit on themselves. So Greg's like, yeah, let's give DayZ a try. It's a mod for Arma. So I downloaded Arma, and I downloaded the DayZ mod. And Arma, by the way, is a first-person combat simulator. It's not a first-person shooter like Battlefield or Left 4 Dead or anything like that. It is a first-person combat simulator. It tracks where you get hit. I mean, the United States Army uses Arma for virtual training. You get shot in the hand, you can't work the slide on your weapon. And you're bleeding out. You're in pain, and it will affect everything you do. It's a very gritty game that way. So we're walking around in the woods. We're like heads on a swivel. It's a really low population server. We're in a newbie friendly-ish area, and we're just walking along, and we're kind of going down a gentle slope in a wooded area, and there's a log. And I had rebound my keys, and I was like, okay, well, let's see how high I can jump. And I jumped over the log. I broke both my legs and immediately contracted an infection. I jumped over a log. It was like crunch. And the screen like starts flashing red and white, showing me that I'm in an incredible amount of pain. And then I see like these messages scrolling up. You have contracted tetanus. You have contracted tetanus. And I'm like, Greg, what do I do? And he's like, log off and log back on. So that's my DayZ story. I jumped over a log, contracted tetanus, and died.
It's a bit less brutal these days. It's more you die the first 3 or 4 times, and then you figure out how to not starve to death in the first day and stuff. It's a bit less brutal. The brutality comes from other players. Really. There's this area in the Northwest Airfield where all the flash gear is to pick up and that. And PJ's like, oh, we should go there. And I'm like, oh, I think we need to work up to that, because that's where all the experienced players head. And then they grab all the best gear and they'll take you out, you know. You just have to start again for nothing. But like, we should explore a little bit more and enjoy the game. And think about it as a long-term campaign thing. About 3 months from now, go there. But no, what I wanted to just say was that the lessons that you get from tabletop role-playing of the right kind, like a great game like this or like this, will apply to computer games as well, at least when there's other people involved. If it's just the software, well, you just do what's programmed in the game. But if there's other people involved, those lessons will apply too. And things like avoid unnecessary encounters, try to work in a team. You know, the one on their own will die. You know, so when I walked into that dungeon, fell in a 20-foot pit, I died. When I was, and then in playing DayZ, being in that cop station, coming out on my own, because me and PJ were playing separately that day, on my own, I died. Had he been with me, there would have been 2 of us. The guy outside would have realised there were 2 of us, heard our voices, and he would have backed off. He might have, sat on top of a nearby building to snipe, but he probably would have backed off. He would have been less inclined to take us both on. And if he hadn't realised there were 2 of us, he himself would have got surprised, because PJ would have seen me go down, and he would have been, I'm going to get this bastard. And he would have come out, and he would have, no longer surprised, he would have come out and would have been at least 50-50 chance of getting him. And so then when I came back, when I respawned, I would have come and been able to loot my own corpse, So, Yeah. So
And had a snack.
the lessons of yeah, that's right. Avoid unnecessary encounters and work as a team, and to plan ahead and scout around and be aware of your surroundings. Make a plan and stick to it. Like all that kind of stuff that works in D&D will work in this kind of game as well. So I find that interesting that you come from one thing. You're doing this barbell stuff, and you come back with insights about body weight stuff. Body weight exercises. You do your body weight exercise, you come back with insights about the barbell exercises. Likewise, you come and you play D&D, you end up with insights about online multiplayer games, and vice versa as well. And you start to understand better, and you become a better player. That's the thing that's not often talked about. Becoming a better player, a better game master, by running different games, playing different games, and you gradually increase your skill, and you become better at all of them. And it is a skill. It is a skill. We want to make it accessible that anyone can just sit down and play, but it is a skill, and it is worthwhile getting better at it. You choose something in your life to get better at anyway.
It is. There is an art to it that requires constant honing, and that doesn't just mean play D&D 5 days a week. God love you if you can get that kind of playtime in. Go do it. But it comes from everywhere. From computer games, from reading materials, from even watching good movies and TV shows that fit your ideal can help you out with all of that. I think one of the more useful things that I have ever done just with free CPU cycles in my head is to watch a movie and think about the characters in the movie, what they're doing. It works best with genre pictures. This is not so good with Sex, Lies, and Videotape, more Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark. But look at the characters in the movie and think of yourself as the GM running them through that scenario. Just how you would react to certain things that the players are doing. We had a standing joke years ago at my table, like, okay, so what if there were no Star Wars movies, but that was actually in some alternate universe, that's a Traveler game? And the guy playing Obi-Wan, when they pull up to the stormtroopers and Mos Eisley tries a little psi power. These aren't the droids you're looking for. All right, give me a dice roll. Now, I'm not going to lie, guys. I did just roll a 1 on the die that I rolled. But, you roll a 1, and it's like, you look at the player. The Imperial Stormtrooper butt strokes you with his blaster rifle and says, "These clearly are the droids we're looking for, old man. Out of the land speeder, on your bellies now." It's fun. It's fun to do. It can be fun to do. So one thing, and I want to say this like going forward. Rob says, Arma is brutally realistic. I had a similar experience in the Morrow Project. One of these times, Kyle, we need to sit down and do either a Let's Play or a Let's Read on Morrow Project, because that's kind of a fascinating RPG. Topically, that's a fascinating... I know nothing about the rules of Morrow Project. It could be as jank as the jankiest jank that ever janked. But it wouldn't suck to take a look at that one of these days soon. If you're game. But anyway.
Well, I got to head off now.
Okay. I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up too, guys. Thank you, Kyle. It's lovely to see you again. I know it's week to week, but hopefully next week we'll get back.
Next week should be good.
Oh, excellent. That makes me happy. So next week we'll fix more of your gaming problems. Leave questions in the Discord. Leave comments on the videos. Hit that subscription button and hit that bell icon. We are so close to having enough people to do the virtual online gaming convention, guys. Remember, when we hit 1,000, and we are currently sitting at, let's see, I want to see this.
766.
766. That's great. That's popped up a little bit from last time I looked. So 766. If we get to 1,000 now, we're gonna have a virtual mini online convention. I'm gonna run games. Kyle's gonna run games. OD&D, AD&D. I'll run some Twilight 2000. Speaking of janky futuristic RPGs, new games. I'll run. I almost said Stranger Things. I almost did it. I'll run some Tales from the Loop. And it's good to see you, Rob. Thank you for stopping by. But yeah, get your friends to subscribe and click the bell icon and like the videos and leave comments and come play with us over in the Discord. Thank you again, as always, to our friends over at Bards of Greyhawk. We love you guys. Did some great music for the show. I'll get that trailer for the show made one of these days, and the intro and outro, but it's coming. I promise it's coming. So you guys have an absolutely fantastic day. I'll be back tomorrow for lunchtime when we'll dive more into the Dungeon Master's Guide and talk more about AD&D DMing practices. So y'all have a lovely evening, and we'll see you later. Peace, everyone.
See you guys.